Welcome to the Songwriter Connection podcast, where we look at the craft of songwriting through the eyes of the songwriter. Each week, we make a connection with a music maker, listen to their songs, and hear their stories. From Nashville, Tennessee, here's your host, Dave Lenahan.
Hi, I'm Dave. I want to thank you for the listen. I've missed you the past couple of months. We start Season 3 today, and I'm so excited about Season 3. We've got so many great guests lined up for you to make a connection with. And today, we're so honored. Let me get right to it and tell you that she's a songwriter, okay? A singer, and I'll tell you, probably one of the most recognizable voices in country music history. Her career in songwriting and singing has spanned 6 decades. She's and I can remember from my Ryman days, touring the Ryman in the Women of Country room, there are 4 female artists that have been members of the Grand Ole Opry for 50 years. Most recently, Dolly, but there's also Connie Smith and Loretta Lynn, and our guest today. She was the first woman to host the Grand Ole Opry. So she really helped to blaze the trail for ladies out there in country music. She was the first to interview stars backstage for broadcast, and she still broadcasts today on Sirius XM. You can hear her on Willie's Roadhouse every Sunday. She's with us today. She's also an actress and an author. And it's just our honor to have on our podcast, sitting around our Duncan Fife dining room table, Miss Country Soul is our guest. Welcome, Jeannie Seely. Hi.
Thank you so much. No wonder I'm tired. I just heard all that you said.
But you're as beautiful as ever. My goodness.
Well, thank you. I have been so blessed. I really have, to see so many of my dreams come true. And I was thinking as you were reading those off, I was told one time, said, there's no telling how far you would have gone if you'd ever decided exactly what you wanted to be when you grew up. Well, I'm still trying to decide,
You're good in so many different areas. That is a blessing.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, actually, to me, I believe success is doing what you want to do and where you want to do it. And I've been very fortunate. My dreams were to do exactly what I'm doing and to do it my way on my terms. And so I've never wanted into the heavy management and all that because that wasn't my goal. My goal was to do a little bit of all the things I enjoy and still be able to enjoy my home life.
And to follow your passions, and that is success. It really is. I agree.
It is.
There's so many things I want to talk to you about, but this is about songs and the stories behind them. Can I start with a song that's been one of my all-time favorites? Since I've been doing country music, this song has never gotten old for me. And we're taking the version from your latest record, an American classic. So this is a new version of this great song, Don't Touch Me. Can I play that? Is that okay? Can we start with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Jeannie Seely on the Songwriter Connection podcast.
Your hand is like a torch each time you touch me. The look in your eye pulls me apart. Don't open the door to heaven if I can't come in. Don't touch me if you don't love me, sweetheart. Your kiss is like a drink when I'm thirsty. With all my heart, but don't love me, or then act as though we've never kissed. Don't touch me if you don't love me, sweet. if I can't come in. Don't touch me if you don't love me, sweetheart. No, don't touch me if you don't love me, sweet.
Such a wonderful song. Jeannie Seely, our guest on the Songwriter podcast, and we appreciate you listening. Jeannie, that is, like I said, one of those songs that just never gets old to me. And I'll tell you what, working at the Ryman, I used to work in that record booth, and right next to it, we had a video. And in that video, you're singing that song.
Oh, really?
And every time you'd walk by, you'd stop, there she is. You know, oh my goodness. So,
Well, I've always felt very fortunate to get that song.
there's a neat story behind that song, too, isn't
Yeah,
there?
well, actually, I was on the road with Porter Wagner at that time, and Hank was in Indianapolis.
We're talking about
with
Hank Cochran,
Hank
who's
Cochran,
one of the
yeah.
great songwriters. Okay.
Yeah, he was up there with a bunch of other songwriters doing something. But anyway, he had the idea, and he called me and said, what do you think about this? And told me the first verse. Well, he had me at the first line. I love that opening line of that song. Whether you're saying it to somebody or you're hearing it from somebody, that line just grabs you. But anyway, I told him I really liked it. And so back then you could grab a flight in 30 minutes if you wanted to, you know. So he flew we were in Rochester, New York, and Hank got on a flight and flew up there, and we finished writing it in my dressing room.
Really?
And the next morning he called my room and he said, I think I wrote a smash last night. Tell me you remember it, because Hank had been pretty far into the scotch bottle at that time. And I said, oh, yes, I remember it very well. So, yeah, but a lot of people want it. Actually, he was on a flight when he left there with Buck Owens, and he was telling Buck about it, and Buck wanted the song. But
I heard that Buck really wanted that song, and you know,
Yeah.
to this day, I can't imagine Buck singing that song.
no, I can't either.
It's so much more powerful from a woman's point of view, I think. You know,
Well, yeah, I think it from either, though. Ray Price did a great version of it, and that was the thing when we were looking for songs. Hank said, what do you want to sing? And I said, well, I want a ballad that gives me room to express me, and I wanted to have something to say. I liked the fact that it was different from what they were making most women sing then, where you can go do anything wrong you want to and come home and I'll always be here. Right. This isn't what she was saying, and it was no threat. She just simply said, if this isn't the real thing, I don't even want to go there. I don't want any part of it. And I liked that. That's what I wanted to say. Wow. And I also told him I wanted a song that everybody could identify with it, whether they were married or single, male or female, young, old, it didn't matter. And he said, boy, you don't want much, do you? I said, I want a hit song, and you know how to write them. So,
yeah, and that song went to the top of the Billboard charts, but there's other charts that had it number one, and that crossed over to the pop charts.
Right.
So, yeah.
I did.
So,
well, you know, and you mentioned not getting tired of hearing it. I've always felt so fortunate, because I would have hated to hit on a novelty song and have to sing something like that every night for you know, it's been almost 60 years I've been singing this now, so 56, 57 for sure.
You feel the same way? Never gets old? Is that one of those songs?
No, it's, if you notice through the years, it's changed some. Some of it, I wasn't even conscious that I'd changed the arrangement. I just put myself in that position again and sing it however I sing it that night. It's just delivering how I feel. But I'm so grateful that I have that great piece of material to be my signature song.
That's fantastic.
I was able to learn so much from Hank as a writer.
And you were married at one time.
We
right?
were.
Mm-hmm.
We were married for 14 years, I
14
guess.
years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always joked and said, yeah, the good times with Hank were some of the best times of my life. The bad times were absolutely the worst times of my life. But that was a roller coaster ride, but a great ride too. And of course, I helped raise 3 boys that Hank had that are still a joy to me. I still am in touch with them.
Very, very nice. Very blessed. Let me ask you, are you still the only Opry star from Pennsylvania? I thought I saw that somewhere.
One of the guys in Diamond Rio, Gene Johnson, is up there.
Is he? Okay.
And of course, Del McCoury lived in York, Pennsylvania for a long time. I don't think he was born there, but he lived up there for a long time. But yeah, I think other than that, I'm the only one.
And the reason I was born in Buffalo, New York. Okay, and then my parents, we moved to west side of Cleveland when I was just a baby, and there were a lot of trips, through Erie to Buffalo.
Right.
And there were times I remember meeting cousins and uncles to play a weekend of golf at Cross Creek, which is in Titusville.
Oh, yeah.
So when I saw you were born in Titusville, I know that town.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of where the oil industry started in the mid 1800s in the U.S. here, anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You grew up there?
Yeah, Jack and I worked for a week at Cross Creek Country Club one time. Yeah,
wow.
And a funny story about that was in the winter, and so after we through with the shows, we went out snowmobiling. I can say
fun.
that if I try. And Jack wrecked his, and he went over the windshield of the snowmobile and actually broke his wrist.
Oh, man.
So here he is. And we were worried about his wrist being broken and didn't pay attention to his voice.
Are you talking about Jack Green here?
Yes.
Okay, Jack Green.
I'm
and you,
sorry,
great duet partners.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But anyway, we hadn't paid any attention to whether or not he could sing or not, and realized when we went in that night, he couldn't talk. He couldn't, he could barely talk. He couldn't sing. And he had hit his throat on the windshield as we went over the snowmobile. So that was a time, man, trying to and we had to cut the sleeve of his shirts, his jackets, to get his cast through there. And we used to laugh, the boys in the band, it took all of us to get him dressed, and we'd sit him down on the front seat of the bus like you did a kid and say, sit there till showtime, don't do anything, so we could go on and get set up. And
your career with Jack was just amazing. You guys really changed things in the industry of how shows were packaged and moved around, right?
Well, that was kind of a trend at the time of known male artists, known female, and a duet team to put a show together. And was a great advantage for promoters because they got the unit all in one contract, one deal. And also great for the fans, So we had a great following.
Yes, you did.
But there were several, like Porter and Dolly, Bill and Jan.
You were Porter's partner before Dolly, right?
Yeah, just for a brief time because Don't Touch Me hit,
and
I had so many opportunities, and I hated to leave. I really did. And Porter was pretty upset with me for a while because it's hard to reorganize your group and find the right person, what works on stage and what works off stage. Especially all of you traveling on a bus. You've got several personalities. You got to get along and got to work it out. So he wasn't real happy with me. And it was like, but then, we certainly, it all turned out because Porter and I were very close.
That's good.
In the following years. But
I read somewhere that, like at the age of 4, you were tuning the family radio to the Grand Ole Opry on WSM.
Yeah, I couldn't read.
You're a big Opry fan, right?
Oh, absolutely. I still am.
Yeah.
I couldn't read, of course, but I memorized everything.
Wow.
From my mother said I would see something, and boy, I just never forgot it.
Now, was country a thing in Titusville, in the area
Oh,
where you grew
yeah.
up? Yeah, big.
Titus, Pennsylvania, period's always been
Yeah.
a very big country music state.
So how old were you when you decided you're going to write your first song?
I started, I was probably about 10 or so when I always wrote. Of course, we lived way out in the country, you know, too, but I remember some of my first things was writing a little verse for my mother for Mother's Day or for her birthdays or whatever. You know, I'd write her card, always make up something. I wish I had some of them.
I bet.
But, you know.
Yeah. So did you play an instrument at that time? Or was it mostly lyric? Or?
We tried with the mandolin. In fact, there's a picture of me somewhere, my brother with the guitar and me with the mandolin, and it's hilarious to look at it. And then I learned some chords on the guitar, but I never did like that. I play a little bit of piano, just enough to write with or to try to rehearse with.
Okay.
Until I get to chords I don't know, and then I call on the pros and say, I hear this chord, where is it going?
What is that chord? Sometimes you hear that chord, what is that chord?
Yeah. And I get them to show me.
Now, there's a song. You're up for a Song of the Year for the Arkansas Country Music Association.
Yeah.
And it's a great song. I want to play that next.
Oh.
And I'm rooting for you, even though that I've been working with and writing songs with a lady named Pamela Hopkins, who is up for Entertainer of the Year and Female Vocalist of the Year and Album of the Year, and I'm so excited. But I'll be rooting for you. This is a great song called Yours, and tell us about this one. This was written in the 80s, right?
It was. And Diane Berry was playing guitar and singing harmony with me and my band at that time, so we were doing the demo on all these songs, and I got to thinking, I was listening to her, and I thought, this needs a softer voice than mine. So I asked her if she'd like to do the demo on it. So she did, and it came off so well. And she said, would you hold this song for me for a while and let me see if I can get a record deal? So I held it, and of course nothing happened with her, but then life happened, and I simply forgot the song. And I had done it on a television show, and Danny Davis plays bass for me, had seen it. And he called me and said, why aren't we doing this song at the Opry? I love it. So I had it on my list to start doing again and to go in the studio and record myself because I hadn't done it. And Diane called me one day and she said, I want you to hear something. And she played me their duet on it. I was blown away. It's just...
Not even knowing she was going to do it.
Wow. Didn't know.
And that's Joe Wade Smith who sings it with her. And this guy's voice.
Yes.
First time I heard his voice, I'm like, oh, it's like Merle meets Lefty. I mean, it's so...
yes, it's very rich.
Well, let's just play it.
Okay,
and we'll let
thank
folks
you.
This is called Yours, written by Jeannie Seely, and it's up for the Arkansas Country Music Association Song of the Year, and you're going to know why. There it is.
I'd like to be in somebody's arms, somebody's arms like yours.
I'd like to be hearing someone say I love you, and I'd like those words to be yours.
I'd like to know I'm in someone's plans, someone with plans like yours.
Then I put my life and my love in their hands, and I'd be happy if those hands were yours. 'Cause
I'd like to be someplace with you, someplace like my place was yours. I want to belong to someone like you. Oh, please help me. I just want
Carrie, about
to
why I should
be yours.
Songwriter Connection is the podcast. Our guest is Jeannie Seely, who wrote that song, and it's sung by Joe Wade Smith and Diane Berry. More with Jeannie in just a little bit. Got to take a little break, but stay with us. We got lots more to talk about.
You're listening to the Songwriter Connection, connecting with music makers and hearing their songs and stories. Now back to the show with your host, Dave Linehan.
Jeannie Seely is our guest, and so much to talk to you about, and we've been talking a lot about songwriting. You had an album recently that you were telling me about, where it's songs that you have written that other artists recorded, not necessarily you. Tell us about that project.
Yeah, and I'll make sure you get that. I think you would appreciate it, especially since your show is directed at songwriters. I realized, well, actually, Eddie Stubbs is the one who kept telling me, you've written all these songs that other people have done. He said, you know, people are interested to hear the writer, how the writer would do them.
I think so, yeah.
So that started, and I'd also mentioned to Kenny Sears, who plays fiddle with me, I said, I'm thinking about going back in the studio. I need to start looking for some songs. And Kenny said, why don't you look in your closet? And so I had mentioned to him what Eddie said. So that's what came up with it. It's called Written in Song.
Wow.
And there's 14 songs on there that I've recorded. I believe it's 11 members of the Country Music Hall of Fame now that have recorded my songs.
That's fantastic. Including the Fair and Young hit, the big...
Since Hank Williams Jr. is the most recent one. He recorded one of mine way back when he was still recording real country stuff. A song Glenn Martin and I wrote called She's a Name Dropper, and now she's dropping mine.
I love it. What a look. That's fantastic. Where do you get the ideas from, Jeannie? How do you what is the Jeannie style?
I don't know where some of them come from. Some of them were written by real life experiences that Leaving and Saying Goodbye was. It was one time during a very troubled time with Hank, and so I had tried to leave, and it just, that was a failure at that too, But I remember saying, saying you're leaving's a whole lot easier than actually doing it, And so that's where that came from. But so many of the songs, the one that Dottie West and I wrote, called He's All I Need, and Dottie was working in Vegas, and she called me and she said, everything's going great out here, but she said, I just miss girlfriend time. She said, why don't you fly out and spend some time with me? So I did, and we were sitting there talking, and she, for a while, I felt like I was running the Dottie West School of Musicians for her, because I think there were 3 members from my group that ended up with Dottie. But I was always for any time any of my musicians could find a better job. I mean, that's what we all do. So I was happy for them, because I always knew there was another musician out there who needed the opportunity to work with me. So that's just how it worked.
That is so great that you were like that. We had in season 1, we had Willie Ackerman's son. You probably knew Willie, drummer.
Yes, I did.
Trey is a songwriter around, and he told a story that he traveled with Farron Young for years, and Farron had told Willie one day, and I love this story. He told him, he said, you can make a lot more money as a studio musician.
Right.
You're in great demand. And he goes, Farron, I'm loyal to you, man. You hired me, and I'm with you. And he said, in that case, you're fired.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And Willie went on to triple his income. So
right.
Yeah. So
but anyway,
that's cool. Yeah.
Dottie and I were sitting there talking about that, and she said, Jeannie, did you find another guitar player that you're happy with? And I said, Yeah, and I was talking about the guitar player. I said, well, he's not Bobby Whitten, but he's all I need. And we both looked at each other the same time, and she reached for the guitar, and I reached for the legal pad, and we wrote, he's not all you were, but he's all I need.
Great song.
So,
Look that one up, too, and play that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And,
you and Dottie were such good friends,
yes.
weren't you?
Yeah. We always called each other our 3 o'clock in the morning friend, because that one, if you need to talk to somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning, she would always listen, and vice versa, So a lot of times she would call me when she'd be on the road, and finally get through with everything and get either back on the bus or the hotel room or whatever and call. So
tragic when we lost her. And you, I thought I had read or seen that you put the cross up. That's as you get off to get on the where the Opry is. As you get off the exit of Riley Parkway and you're heading toward the Opry Mills area, there's a cross.
That's where the accident happened, where we lost her.
Yeah,
running late for the Opry, and of course, Dottie was always running late, and she would make me a nervous wreck. And when I was with her on several things, I'm like, Dottie, are you looking at what time it is? But anyway, and at her funeral, we were sitting there and we're waiting, and I leaned up to Jan Howard and I said, you don't suppose? And she said, she is already late because we always said Dottie will be late for her own funeral. And she was.
And she was.
Yeah, right.
Oh, my goodness.
So I know she was up there laughing at Jan and me.
Great story. I wanted to ask you, because I worked at the Ryman. I started as a tour guide just for a couple of years, and I loved it. I'm the kind of guy that would walk in the Ryman, even to this day, I get goosebumps, and I walk up to that stage and I touch that stage and try to imagine who was singing on that. The first 3 feet of that stage is the old Opry boards from back in the day when the Opry was there, and so touch that and you kind of imagine who might have stepped on those boards, So that's the kind of guy I am, and I'm really into the history of recorded music. So you've been a member for, it's going to be 55 years here?
Yes,
coming up, right? Tell me about that first moment. It was at the Ryman, right, that you debuted, 66 or 7?
Yeah, I think Ron Harmon told me it was May 28th. 1966. It was that last weekend in May, I know.
After Don't Touch Me, it hit.
Yeah.
Okay.
In 66 that I made my first.
So what was it like, a girl that, as a little child, would tune to the Opry before she could read to actually play on that stage? It must have been...
Well, it was really... Keep in mind, too, that even though I'd listened to the Opry my whole life, I had never attended the Opry until I was on it. I had never even seen it.
So a double thrill.
Yeah, I mean, I had seen the Ryman when I came back to cut a demo session in 60, because I had left Pennsylvania, was living in Southern California, in L.A. area. So, but I never had a ticket. I never sat out front and watched the Opry. So all of a sudden, I mean, not just performing out there too, but in the backstage area, all of a sudden I'm shoulder to shoulder with some of my heroes that I had never even seen in person.
Wow.
It was just totally unreal. And
anyone strike you the most when you saw them?
Well, of course, Ernest Tubb was one of my heroes, and he was so big during World War II when I was a child, And I used to, know all of those songs. I had no idea what Rainbow at Midnight or any of those songs were about, but I sang them as a little kid. So, yeah, Ernest was very much somebody I wanted to meet, and I did get to meet him before at the Opry. Cool. But
who brought you out that day? Remember?
I think it was Stoney Cooper.
Stoney Cooper. Okay.
And
Wilma Lee and Stoney Cooper.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So what did it feel like?
It was wonderful.
Standing there, sugar, you must have been nervous.
I was very nervous, but like I said, just totally overwhelmed. Truthfully, I hardly remember. I do remember the night I was became a member, I had flown my parents down, and I had in my mind what I was gonna introduce them and what I was gonna say about them. I got out there and somebody hit an A chord, and I just started to sing "Your Hand," you know. And then, thank goodness, they gave me an encore. So when I went back out, I had my head together enough to acknowledge my parents and all of that.
So
but
cool. Very nice.
Yeah, you know, somebody was asked me recently about, so what does it feel like to you to step into the circle? And I just looked at him and I laughed. And I said, well, you got to remember the circle was the floor of the Ryman stage when I went there. So, and I've always cut, and I cover the stage, you know. But
they cut a little circle out of the back left-hand side if you were standing on stage. And it was Roy that decided that, Roy Acuff, wasn't it? That we would bring a part of the Ryman to the new Opry House. And that's the circle today that they all stand in and sing. So, and
it does mean, I joke about it, but it does mean a lot. First of all, it means so much that someone thought to do that. Yeah. That had that reverence for it and realized the importance of it, because I probably wouldn't have. I mean, I'm so glad they did. And there are certain songs that I sing, and like I said, I work the entire stage. And but there's certain songs that I sing that I make sure I'm in that circle. Wow. And one of the most recent ones was the song that I recorded on the new album, if you could call it that, was the song that Dottie had started writing. And so I make sure that I end up in that circle when I sing that, because I feel like she's sharing it with me.
You know, this is an amazing story, and I wanted to get to that. I mean, this was a song that Dottie started writing, right, but didn't finish. And then tell me the rest of that story. And it's on this new record, An American Classic.
Yeah.
And I'll play it. I got
Ron Harmon, who is like my adopted little brother. I wouldn't have any website or anything without Ron, but he had some of Dottie's memorabilia. And he was going through it in this journal, and he saw that, and it just struck a chord with him. It's like, this is wonderful. This needs finished. So he took it to Bobby Tomberlin, who then called...
Great song.
Yes. But he called Steve Warner in, because Steve, of course, worked and spent more time with Dottie, to make sure they could get the essence of what Dottie would have written. And I truly, truly think they did.
They captured it, huh?
I do. I think the entire feel of it. What was so funny, too, and I don't know how I would have felt if they'd have given that song to anybody else first, you know. Yeah. Somebody needs to go on and record it again. But one of the things that was funny is in that journal, on the inside cover of that journal, she had Jeannie Seely, 8247011, which was my number back then.
So she really was writing.
So we said that was meant to be. That's what she meant by that.
And I love the fact that you sing it in the circle when you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I share that with her.
So this is Jeannie, that song that we're talking about, from the most recent record, which is called An American Classic, and it really is a great record. So let's listen to it. This is the song that Dottie started, and Steve Warner, Bobby Tomberlin finished up, and it's Steve Warner joining on this one too.
Right, yeah.
Gather my things, jump right in that same old traffic. Welcome to my routine. And then at work I hear
Great song. From an American classic, the Jeannie Seely record, her most latest. And Jeannie, that is a special song. I could almost hear Dottie West singing that, you know?
Yeah, we all can.
Yeah.
I think she's smiling.
Mm-hmm. She got to be happy for that.
You know, I was so honored they asked me to sing Here Comes My Baby at the medallion ceremony when she was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. And I was standing backstage. You know, that's a very daunting room. When you look out there, everybody out there's in the Hall of Fame or heavy powers in the business. And I was a little bit nervous. And then all of a sudden I thought, you know, this isn't about me. This is about Dottie. And I'm getting to finish something she started. Had she not lost her life, Dottie would have made that journey into the hall herself. And so I felt, all of a sudden, just felt very calm. And it's like, let's go do this for Dottie.
Great. I'm going to bring it up. You are not in the Hall of Fame, and there is a push right now for it. I've seen it on Facebook everywhere.
Yeah.
Why? How do you, I cannot fathom that fact right now.
Well, you know, there are so many. My thinking on it, truly, I wish they would change this. The industry has grown, and to get even caught up, let alone stay even, they need to add more people every year.
I agree.
And there's so many people so deserving. I, of course, would just absolutely be thrilled beyond words to be able to join my peers there. And if it happens, I'd like very much for it to happen while I'm still healthy enough to participate in things and use that as a platform, if you will, to be able to tell people to follow your dreams. Don't ever give up. I think, you know, that we sometimes get to a point where you think, well, I'm just going to give up on it. But that would
Don't
be
ever.
me, you know. I was joking about I have my star in the walkway across the street. And I said, I wonder if they're ever going to let me cross the street.
It's right directly across.
Right.
So,
but it would be a tremendous thing, and I'd like to be there. I'd like to be more than a plaque on the wall.
I would too. Is there anything the fans can do to help? I mean, get on that push on Facebook, or
I guess write to Country Music Association.
Yeah.
Hopefully they listen to the fans. We do.
I think it's going to happen. I think it will. It's got to.
Thank you, Dave.
You deserve it. You should be there with all your friends. You know, I remember working. I loved working at the Ryman, and there was a big picture of, I want to say, the class of '64 of the Opry. And the joke was always a challenge. We'd say people would be looking at that picture, picking out all the stars, and I'd always say, "Can you find Willie Nelson there?" And nobody could, because it was the days before the beard and the long hair, and he's wearing a brown suit. And finally, he pointed out, and they go, "Oh yeah, I can see that." Because there was a time he was not right. It was just 1 year, wasn't it? Because Nashville couldn't figure out what to do with Willie.
No,
but I know you guys are really, really close, huh?
Yeah, Willie has always fascinated me as a person, as a singer, and certainly as a writer.
Yeah.
And we all worked out of Pamper Music. I was very fortunate when I came to be where I was, to be able to be around Hank and Willie and Harlan and Ray Price and
best songwriters
Roger
in the
Miller, you know,
artists.
Some of the best, you know, to learn from. But I remember one thing Willie told me one time. He said, "You need to work on your diction," because he said, and he kind of winked at me. He said, "There's no sense in us staying up all night writing song lyrics if nobody hears what we're saying."
Important.
So I've passed that on to and young people, if I think they're going to listen to me and not be offended, because it changed the world for me. And I've been so glad, because I've had people say, "I love listening to you talk or listen to your records because I understand what you're saying." So,
and that is important.
Thank Willie Nelson for that. But you listen to Willie's diction is so good. You don't ever have to wonder what he's saying.
You never have to. No. Now, and you toured with Willie, so shortly after your accident and things, he really helped to get you back and going again, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. it was a time I really needed that lift up, if you will. It was after Jack and I had split the show, and I was trying to figure out how to regroup and go on by myself, and that opportunity came up to open for Willie on the fair dates, and it really gave me a lift during that time, and
you were in Honeysuckle Rose too,
yeah.
right? With him, you were in Honeysuckle Rose with him, the movie.
Yeah, I got to be in the movie. Yeah. I found out real quick too. Movie making's a lot of hard work.
I bet it is.
I have a whole new respect for movie stars, because you're out there and it's hot and dusty, or it's cold, and it's all hours of the day and night, depending on when you needed to film. But it was a wonderful experience. So, yeah, and, for Willie recorded a duet with me way back on one of my albums. We did a male and female version of Old Friends. And then let's see, I was on an album that they did called All American Cowboys that he and I did, You've Been Leaving Me for Years. One of my favorite things I've ever recorded, period, was that.
Powerful.
Yeah,
wow.
Great song.
And of course, Willie joined you on this new record, an American classic. And you guys did a duet, and tell me about this song.
Well, I've loved this song. Dallas Wayne wrote the song and recorded it, and I loved Dallas's version of it so much. And so when I thought about recording it, I just thought, you better learn this real quick and don't listen to Dallas anymore. You got to make this your own. So we started out with me doing it. Then when we heard that Willie wanted to do something on the album, because I'd done all this, and I told my husband, I said, I can't believe I'm on Willie's Roadhouse. I didn't even ask Willie if he'd like to be a part of it. So anyway, he said, yes, what do you want me to sing? Well, I thought this would be good, and also I knew that Willie liked this song too. So we sent it to him, and I loved when Dallas Wayne heard it. He said, I love the reading on this. He said, it sounds like an intimate conversation between two old friends. Oh, man. I loved that depiction. And then I listened to it, I thought, yeah, it really kind of does.
Now, you mentioned, so I want to plug, you do a radio show on Sirius XM.
Yes.
Sundays
with Seely.
Place. Sundays with Seely. What a great name. I love it.
Well, a friend of mine actually named it. We didn't know what we were going to call it. And she posted on Facebook. She said, I've got my coffee pot on and my computer set to Willie's Roadhouse and my speakers on all over the house and my Sunday paper. She said, I'm set for Sundays with Seely. And I'm like, I like that. So that's I
great.
mentioned it kind of caught on. And I'm just really honored to have this show. And it's been a challenge trying to learn to do what you do and so many on the other side of the microphone. But I'm loving the fact that I get a chance to interview some of my peers on the show as well.
And weren't you one of the first first ladies to interview people backstage for broadcast on the Grand Ole Opry, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
Roxanne, she was Roxanne Russell then. Roxanne Atwood now was doing the Opry notes, and she did some things there, but I was the first artist female artist to do it. Very cool.
Yeah, there's a whole rabbit hole I'd like to jump in on that too. But I want to play this Willie Nelson and Jeannie Seely track, and he even adds a little signature guitar solo.
Trigger appeared too. I was so glad.
That's right. So let's play. It's called Not a Dry Eye in the House, and it's great. It really is a great song. Mm-hmm. Jeannie Seely, our guest on the Songwriter Connection podcast.
But but memories wood and stone.
And when I think of you, that's when I lose control. There's not a dry eye in the house. Since you've been gone,
you played your part to perfection. You always left me wanting more. Standing in the spotlight's reflection, you brought the house down when you walk out the door.
there's not a dry eye in the house. We used to call a home.
And there's nothing left but memories, wood and stone.
And when I think of you, that's when I lose control.
There's not a dry eye in the house since you've been gone. And then I think of you.
And that's when I lose control.
There's not a dry eye in the house since you've been gone.
Isn't that a great song? Not a dry in the house. That is Jeannie Seely and Willie Nelson from the new record, an American classic. And this album it's got so many great guests along with you. Rodney Vincent, who's finally in the Grand Ole Opry, Steve Wariner, Lori Morgan, another good friend of yours that we haven't had a chance to talk to too much about. Vince Gill is on this record, Ray Stevens, Waylon Payne, who's the son of Sammy Smith, right? And a great actor and singer. And of course the Whites, which we're going to examine the next song. But before we go, I wanted to ask you, you were such a trendsetter, and you did, as I did the tours at the Ryman, we always would pause in the Women of Country room, and there's a beautiful portrait of you in there. And we would talk about how women in country music over the years really haven't had a fair shake. And it's come to be a whole new controversy in the last couple of years, this Tomato-gate thing, because some radio programmer said, you season the ladies into the music that you choose. They're kind of the tomatoes. They're not the meat and potato. And how offensive was that? You find, is it changing? Because I know you blazed the trail. You were like the first to wear a mini skirt on the Grand Ole Opry, right? And that was frowned upon.
Well, the relevance of that was just simply that I wore something different than what everybody else was wearing. And keep in mind, I hadn't been there, and so I had seen the pictures of all the girls and the gingham ruffles, and I figured that's what they wanted to wear. I didn't, so it never entered my mind to wear that. So in California, everybody was wearing the real short
And that's where you
skirts,
came from
and
before you came to Nashville.
Yeah,
That's right.
so I had just come, so I didn't know, and I couldn't even believe when they were, what are you saying to me, you know?
It was your
And
style.
I was like, was there a costume, rule or something that I wasn't told about? And it's like, well, no, but just nobody's ever. Well, anyway. But what happened was when I got away with that, then the other girls were free to wear whatever they wanted to. Not necessarily mini skirts, but like a lot of them went to like the sequins or even pantsuits or whatever. But that's what changed. That was Seely got away with it. So
did they say something? Did they come down on you for that?
Mr. Devine did. They just called me in the office to talk to me, and I didn't know what he was going to talk about, and he stammered around so much. I'm like, what are you trying to say? I think once he started talking to me about it, he realized how silly it sounded, so, but anyway, it was just, and I loved his line. He said, well, okay, but just try to hold it down. I'm like, hold down the miniskirt. Yeah, okay.
I'm going to do that, right?
Yeah.
Are women getting a better shake today?
I definitely think so,
Yeah.
And as far as like hosting the Opry, that's been a source of pride for me that I could see Lori Morgan, Pam Tillis, and that generation after me coming in, walking out there with all the confidence in the world because there was not an issue. They had a right to be there and they could go take their place, and they've done a great job.
And I think of three recent members of the Grand Ole Opry, Rhonda Vincent, Lauren Elena this past weekend, and Carly Pierce, right? And Carly, you've kind of adopted her a bit, haven't you?
Yeah, Carly, I've been watching her since her days in the shows at Dollywood and later at Country Tonight Theater. Extremely talented and very driven, and her work ethic has always amazed me. And after she moved to Nashville, I actually moved in my neighborhood, and I would see her and a friend coming in with the guitars and working on writing. She works all the time.
I worked in Cincinnati radio for a lot of years, and she came from a small town just over the river in Kentucky, Taylor Mill, Kentucky, and I've always just loved her and read for her. So
such good people too, and loves traditional. She's doing her era as she should, but she knows traditional country music and loves it. She's definitely going to be carrying the Opry into the next.
That's good to hear.
Eon, I hope.
Jeannie, I want to leave it with your latest single from that same record we've been talking about, an American classic. So this is with the Whites, Sharon and Cheryl, and it's a song called "So Far, So Good," and it's kind of got that Western swing to it, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. It has that. Well, like I said, growing up in the 40s, the early influence, my mother loved the big band swing sound, and I do to this day. And I tried to capture that feeling with today's Texas swing. Yeah. Of course, the Whites are from Texas, so they got that part down. And there was a part in there that I always liked. I didn't know early on what they were doing. I just liked that sound of the vocal group where they would sing a unison line and then split to harmony. So I asked the girls if they would do that, and they just, they nailed it.
Blood harmony,
so great. Yeah. They're wonderful.
Yeah. So this is the latest single, So Far So Good, Jeannie Seely on the podcast. Written by
Mitch Ballard and Penn Pennington.
Darling, since we met, I don't regret one single step we've made. We're taking it slow, and we both know that's the way to make love stay. 'Cause people who rush in find it's a crush when it don't turn out like it should. So we'll stay where we are, 'cause we like it so far, so far, so good. We both feel the
latest from Jeannie Seely, who has been our guest on this Songwriter Connection podcast. Great song with the Whites, Sharon and Cheryl, right? Mm-hmm. Wonderful. I can't begin to thank you for taking time out of your... You've got so many things happening in your career right now. You are so busy, but you took the time to spend some time with us around the dining room table, and I certainly appreciate that, Jeannie.
Well, this is part of what we enjoy doing. This is why we do this. Thank you for inviting us aboard this wonderful show and the emphasis you're putting on songwriters, because it does all begin with the song. There's no question about that.
It
and
certainly does.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much, and maybe we can do it again one day.
I would love that. I hope we can.
Thank you, Dave.
Yes, and then the next time we're talking about your medallion.
That would be nice. Thank you so much.
All right, Jeannie, thank you.